Well, hello there again. This person you're looking at is, as some of you already know, Lukáš Hubka. I'm the channel sales director here at Easy Software. And let me just tell you, congratulations. Whether you are with us today, this Thursday, or if you're watching the recording, you have obviously decided to take a little time and use it to learn something. Predictable releases at scale is the topic of today's session. It's not going to be me presenting it today for the most part. It's not going to be any of my colleagues from Easy Software presenting either, but we will get to that in a moment. I'm here to host this thing, so allow me to do just a little bit of hosting. I am glad that we've been, or I would say I'm glad to say that we at Easy Software, we have been putting more and more time into cooperations with partners and companies outside of the Easy Software space. We have a great software, of course. We do have a ton of experience with it, but let's be realistic. We do have gaps as well, and it's always good to look outside of our bubbles and outside of our circles and learn from others. Me, myself, I've been in IT sales for about a decade, and poorly managed releases have haunted me several times, and I do believe it's going to continue to haunt me. We found a potential client, I built a good report, I found internal sponsors, I have earned trust, I earned commitment, I earned commissions, yet the project eventually ended because of our software wasn't adopted properly. That's a story that I have seen plenty of times in my experience. And if you would allow me to bring in some of my colleagues from sales or even some peers from other companies, I'm pretty sure that they would tell you the same. The fault is generally on both sides. Sure, the deployment team on the client side should have assured their teams use the software properly, but I could have provided them with more support and information for sure. Oh well, I do not have a time machine, but what I do have is someone that has spent quite some time dealing with predictability and software delivery. So today's presentation is actually going to be spearheaded by Dušan Pavić, the founder of DataDuke. Hello, Dušan. Nice to see you here.
Hello there. Nice to be here.
Beautiful. Before we dive into the topic itself, allow me to just go through a few what I call webinar essentials. So just rest assured, this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared. If you will want to rewatch it at a faster or a slower speed, that's going to be possible. If you will want to share it with any of your colleagues or outside of your organization with some of your clients, for example, feel free to do so. The point of this webinar is to share value, to give something to other people. We always recommend to visit our website. That applies to Easy Software, Easy Redman, and DataDuke as well. Feel free to reach out at any time. That's always encouraged. And if you do want, you can also use the Q&A button here in the Zoom application for questions. We will be addressing the questions at the end of the webinar. Please do not use chat for that because it's a little difficult to navigate. So at the bottom of your application, you see like a little bubble with a question mark in the middle for the Q&A. Feel free to use that throughout the talk. We will be happy to address it at the end of the session. Now we are planning to land between 30 to 40 minutes, depending on where the discussion takes us. But I would say the sweet spot that we want to do is between 30 to 40 minutes. Now I am all out of basic information and I've done my webinar warm-up. We've given plenty of time to other people to join. So Dušan, can I ask you to start sharing your screen and take over?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Although,
Beautiful.
as we talked before, it's gonna be just a walkthrough with presentation. I would definitely like that we talk about this stuff more, like with some examples and so on. So
agreed.
Let me try to do this very easily, and I hope it's gonna work, from the get-go. Do you see my screen?
Yes, just enter the full screen mode. And yes, I do see predictable releases at scale.
Perfect. It's funny that you said, the story which you mentioned, that's how it looked for you. It's basically for me the same, I have to say. I think for everyone is the same. Because this predictability is something that would, it's hard to find it. It's hard to find the sweet spot around this. It's hard to invent something new around it. I think the best way to get through it is to get experienced with it. because then you learn, how to recognize certain symptoms. At the end of the day, we're not machines, right? We're not going to be able to, foresee the future so easily. So that's going to be more like, try and error, but the more you do it, the less error you will produce. And that's how I think I got here, because my history actually goes from, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago when I started with my first Agile role. And since then I stayed in this Agile, world, so to say. Did many roles inside, and I somehow get a feeling that I think I get the point of, how to get better at scale. And one of the things that is mostly important is, of course, transparency across every level, but especially around releases, because at the end of the day, what customer sees is what customer gets. Everything that goes beyond or behind the scene is something that the customer doesn't see, but feels it throughout the releases, right? So when we talk about releases, we'll talk about certain stuff which it's not so easy to see, but actually contribute to getting the predictable releases, so to say. Before we dive into, maybe I can just go with just a few slides where I can just tell you a bit about myself, so you get a picture, my background and my experience. I basically did master studies in business informatics in Vienna. And as I said already, 10 plus years in the Agile world, in these various roles. And the areas, or let's say the industry that I work with is also various, but I also did it not just in the e-commerce, in the enterprise world, but also in the startup world. And you would think, it's a completely different environment, and yes, it is in many aspects. But at the end of the day, what startup wants is to get better at scale, so they would reach the enterprise level, right? So when you think about that, I mean, if I consider my background, I could actually say that not only that I did this many industries that I worked in, but also the life cycle of a company, from startups being scale up and then scale up, turning into middle, let's say mid-sized companies, so to say, and then enterprise. So I can brag with this, but still I don't think I have full knowledge around it. And I'm very happy to be challenged at all times, because that's the only way how we learn. If we would stay in the safe environment, you will never do it. We have quite some companies behind us that we have helped going through the transition. So how we typically do it is that we don't just send an offer and say like, hey, we want to transform your enterprise. That's probably going to be the easiest thing to do for us, but it's something that it doesn't go that easily. It's not so easily accepted by the company. So you need to find the pain point, the pain which they feel at the moment, and explain it in some words which actually get them to understand what needs to be changed. Agile transformation is not only that, it's also the mindset change. It's also the change management that you need to perform and so on. So it's a various thing. And these companies have worked with us, and we did some good stuff for them. I can even share some references, whoever is interested. I can share some case studies that we did, whoever is interested. And if you find yourself in one of these industries where these companies work, I think we can definitely help you to get transformed more easily. Now, let's do a deep dive here. So why is it critical? I mean, when you think about product development teams, and this is usually where I begin with, I start with product development teams where I would look into the processes and see how that works. But the problem is that the CEO or C-level or even VP level or whatever level is like on this management line, they don't really think much about sprints. They don't really think about story points and stuff that we typically use in Agile world. They usually think about timelines, right? So you need to find a way how to do releases, how to predict releases, so that they can see timelines, but you will still stay working in a mode of sprints and story points. And I hope that now with this webinar, we're going to bring a little bit closer this idea to everyone. But of course, I'm always happy to discuss this further. You mentioned 30-40 minutes to focus on the topic. If you ask me, I would probably talk about this whole day, because I think I can. If I get too much or too emotional, please also stop me, tell me, Dušan, please move on.
Will do, don't you worry.
Thank you. But one thing that is very, very important, and it's already written in these slides, but I want to just come down to one single point out of this. When you say in our terms, when you say something is done, you need to make sure that this is the same definition across many departments, across many teams, for every person that is involved in this process. So when you have a release being prepared, that is the point where you should already have discussed. And even before you even started thinking about implementing certain feature, you need to first discuss about what done really means. Because it is different for different people and everybody's speaking from their own perspective. So what happens every time I go into a project, first things we need to do is definition of done, definition of ready, of course, and many other things which go along. But I kind of find it crucial that that something being done is very important to explain to everyone. So I'll jump to the next slide.
I would have actually a question if I can jump in for the slide
please.
before, because I have spoken to a few clients, like before we agreed to this kind of webinar. I've spoken to a few clients to understand if this is something that they would find interesting, they would want to talk about. So I do have a question from them because they couldn't actually attend. And me personally, I was taught to always think in like pains and challenges. So their question was if there are any like recurring symptoms of poor predictability, something that they could go like, oh yeah, I can see myself in this. Oh yeah, this is actually me. Is there something like that that you can sort of pinpoint or bring up?
Yes, and funny thing is that just today we did actually one LinkedIn post about it. It's a coincidental completely, but you know, the first thing which you would notice from any department, that would be the customers complain about the product. You know, simple like that. That would be the first thing you would notice. But that could mean many things, right? You need to discuss now with them what exactly was wrong. The second thing which you would notice is releases not being prepared in time on time, or it is prepared on time and it got out, it's live, but then just a few days later, just a few weeks later, you will get a hotfix. That would be like a patch, you know, that something was terribly wrong, and then you need to again do everything. The thing is, when you do hotfixes, that's usually one or two small things you need to fix. But the problem with this is that it kind of, you know, takes you out of your flow completely. You just started working on something else, something new that brings value, but then you need to go back and just finish what you thought they actually finished, and now you need to redo it. So it costs a lot for the company, you know, right? Time and money, and also, you know, being unsatisfied. People are also feeling pressured and so on. So definitely releases being either not on time or with having lots of hotfixes is gonna show you the first symptoms. So if you feel that if this happens to you, then you probably have a problem with that. Maybe I would add one more point, which is not always tied to this, but you could also recognize it. That's the transparency is missing between business teams and product teams. You know, you always have a feeling in product that the business team is not understanding how difficult or how complex this feature is to implement, so that it takes time to actually do it, and vice versa. The business does not fully grasp the complexity of this, so they think that you're maybe, you know, slacking, not really doing this properly for some reason, any reason, and then they complain always about the product team. So if this happens to you, you know, you have this kind of a problem.
Right. Thank you.
Good. Then let's go next. I'm really in favor of this question. So whoever has any of those, please jump in anytime. I'm happy to discuss further. And now the basic feeling of usually the business side, so the CEOs and the C-level and management, is that if I would add more developers, that would usually be like more output, right? I would get more features done. I would get more bugs crashed, or, you know, stuff would be done faster. But the thing is that this actually creates overhead. If the process is not fundamentally correct or set up properly, so the basics are not fixed, then you have a problem that will just be complexer and complexer, and then you would actually at some point explode. So if you experience this, then you know what I'm talking about. But if you have in mind, if anybody has in mind to actually start adding more teams, more people into teams, please think about if the basics are still working fine. So if the symptoms which we mentioned are not existing, then probably you're okay with adding more people. But other way around, you need to first fix all of that. And you mentioned at the very beginning, I think that you guys also did some scaling, right? You started also recently. So
yeah,
was
I remember
this something that happened to you, or how would you?
Oh, for sure. I know that we spoke about this earlier, even like when preparing this, right? Like for us, for me personally, for example, I've been with the company since we were like at 25 people and then growing up to about 90 people. So we've obviously gone through some scaling in the past. Does more teams equal more speed in all of the cases? I would say not necessarily. In our case, I'm happy to say that in most cases it is how it worked, but there were definitely times where I felt like increasing and expanding teams didn't really lead to that. And I feel like just by having this slide here, it sort of it strengthens the point of why we are doing this, right? Like the side of easy software focusing on easy Redmine, and then you with Dataduke focusing on the predictability. For me, it relates to what we say with easy Redmine, that we are trying to break silos and bring more context in between teams to make better, more educated, data-driven decisions. So that's something that what I feel like if we didn't really care about accountability back then, it could have done us quite wrong. And this is even something that I've seen plenty of times in our clients. We've obviously delivered a lot of implementations in the past, and I've seen this problem be very present in, I would even say, like dozens of cases. And that's just me personally, and there's plenty of other people at Easy Software. So yeah, this is exactly why I felt like it's important to have someone with the skill set in our network and in our sort of extended ecosystem, because I need to keep providing our clients with the option to do things better. Because, like I said, we do have gaps, and when it comes to planning these releases at some scale, it's not something that we have practiced as much as you, for example. I will not disclose names of those clients, but you guys, you know who you are. So I'm sure that you that you can find yourselves when you're watching this recording. So yeah, I've been there. I've seen it. More teams should equal more output, but if it's not the case, then you are definitely a good candidate to get some training sessions scheduled as soon as possible.
Yeah, exactly. You would otherwise get some sort of a metro map like this one here, right? Where a lot of intersections, but then if it's working properly, that's a different angle.
Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to scale teams. You're going to fail a little bit. That's going to cost you a lot of pain, effort, nerves. Then you're going to talk to someone who's experienced, and you're going to do it all over again, just wishing that you had done it right the first time. I can speak from experience on that.
That's definitely my experience as well when I think about all of my clients before, and trust me, it's something you don't want to see, because that usually brings a lot of chaos with budgets, with people, being involved. Like usually it goes, you have a certain amount of people at, like, in a dev team, but then you need to ramp down just so that you can get the stuff correctly sorted. Then you start ramping up, but then you lose people who are actually usually you lose people who are experienced and who were there in the project from the very beginning, and you don't want to do this, because this is all costing you money and also time. I mean, it's also stressy, and it's not really to suggest, but good that you had also at least at the end positive outcome, I would say.
And I know that some of our clients, even like potential or existing ones, are going to ask like whether there is something small they can do, or if they have to like launch themselves into a long process. But I think you do have something about that later into the presentation, right?
We can cross that as well.
Ignore it for the moment. We'll get to that.
No worries.
Thank you.
Well, let's go through some bottlenecks that we usually see. I mean, we talked about the symptoms as well, and it's I see it as kind of could be kind of a domino thing, right? If from the get-go you are a product team and you get some, as already written here, vague specs, so a feature request which is not so well written, and the team accepts, put here accepts as a word which I really think the team should own and should accept or not accept. The team accepts to do this in that way, then of course the ownership and the responsibility goes onto this team. And these vague specs then lead to, creating something which you are not sure that the end customer will actually like. But what you come to at the end, right? When you do the full cycle, then the customer says at the end, look, this is not what I wanted. Can we go back? Of course, cost money, right? Defects found too late. That's also something that really is important and scary, because you want to find these bugs before it goes out, not that it goes out and then the customer tells you, hey, there is a bug. UAT feedback is something that I've noticed many times, especially in the enterprise companies, that they skip. And this is doing this like properly end to end, meaning you involve even business, right? You don't do just in your own bubble the testing, because sometimes you can do it. Sometimes it just the feature is that small, but very often you need to do it with other teams. Very often you need to have a business perspective as well there. So preparing scenarios properly, preparing the data properly, having this on the right system so that the business can actually test before it goes live. These are all crucial stuff that I've noticed. And then the last two things, like the CI/CD pipelines and also the project meetings, it's definitely can create a bottleneck, especially the meetings if you have a ton of them and it's not focused. I really want to say here, emphasize on focused, because every meeting in Scrum ceremony or whatever framework you're using, they have dedicated meetings which are focused meetings. If you do a sprint planning, for example, but then you discuss about refinement, stuff that you would typically discuss in refinement or even a daily or whatever, that is a lost time. And you've blocked the whole team to do something which should not be done in this constellation. So all of this, I mean, the worst case, you would have all of this, right? So all of these bottlenecks, if this hits you, and if somebody can recognize all this as a bottleneck, you probably need to do the basic first. So you probably need to go back to the very origin and just see, have we set up properly? That's probably going to cost you also a lot in time, right? Also than money. But if you are just noticing that there are just a few of those, then I suggest that you really stop now and just reflect on those bottlenecks, get them fixed. Otherwise, it just will compile. You will get them bigger and bigger and bigger, and then in the end, it's going to burst.
Can I have a quick question here?
Yeah, sure, please.
Well, once again, one of our clients asked this, I think three days ago. We have this saying in Czech. It's called, or it said, "Po bitvě je každý generál." Obviously, not many people can understand it in this audience, but it basically means everyone is wise retrospectively after it happens. Everyone knows how it should have been fixed after it happens. So the question was, like, you're speaking about dominoes. So is that like, what advice would you give to recognize like the first piece of the domino falling? Because then once you're, I don't know, like 80% into the failure already, it can be a little bit difficult to fix if you want to prevent it and just like recognize it fast. Is there anything that you can do?
Unfortunately, every domino begins differently in every company. What I can tell you, like from statistically, what happens, what is the first one usually, but I would say that at the end, it depends on the company and it's the whole team setup and the business setup and product setup. Having the business requests not being formulated properly is usually, in my experience so far, is usually the biggest gap. So the misunderstanding between product and business is the first thing that I would say on my list in the last 10 years plus that did not work as good. Because the thing is, with software development, we work in the same framework with the same frameworks for over 20, 30 years now. It's not like that we are inventing something new, how we work, way of working every year, right? So it's usually the same stuff. So the product teams are usually very much good organized. I would put here under quotes, of course, because it depends also case per case. But the biggest challenge is usually the understanding between business and products. It's either transparency completely lost, where business doesn't see that the product is moving, or vice versa, product is not seeing that business is providing the adequate information so the product can actually move on. So it's always a chicken egg kind of thing, right? They're usually doing ping pong, passing the ball, and then at the end, nobody's happy.
All right, thanks. It makes sense. I mean, my first kind of reaction would be, well, isn't it obvious not to accept a request which isn't completely clear? But at the same time, then you like look across my previous experience and not just clients. I'm talking about myself as well, and it's something that I'm guilty of quite a few times.
I can totally relate. I think that from my experience, as I think everybody who is in product, we would notice it from the get-go. But I also get the other perspective. I can understand that business is in totally different world. They think about totally different stuff. So you don't have to be mad at business for not providing the stuff correctly. You just need to give them kind of a playground how they can organize themselves better so that they would deliver you stuff around that you need. So you need to kind of guide them a little bit. And I know it's sometimes an ego thing, right? Sometimes it's difficult to get to some people, but I'm going from the basic line that I say, everybody wants to work the best they can, right? Everybody wants their customers to be happy. So if this is like project success, if above everybody's head says project success, then I think we always speak the same language. We just need to, get the volume up and down, or maybe rephrase some stuff so we could understand it better. But the whole point where we come from is that we want to get better. We want to get our customers happy, because that's the only way how the company is going to survive. That's the thing. So if I move forward, I just want to say one thing, and I'm saying this from the CEO perspective. Definitely, I've seen in enterprise, but also in startup, that CEOs are, even though they should be the first one to notice something is not working well in their company and they want to address it, usually they're the last ones. And when they are the last ones, or among the last ones, they usually make some hard decisions in the sense that they would, cut people off, or do some kind of a ramp down, or just, things that are not so popular. So what I want to say is that you need to see something, you need to see the symptoms before they actually happen, even as a CEO, but also other C levels and VP and so on. So one thing is that if you think about escalations, for example, that would be always happening at last minute, right? So when things are burning, CEOs come in, or C-level comes in and says like, what is this? Why is this not working? And then whole stress is happening. Also, the point with the product keeps kind of slipping, right? It just it doesn't perform as it should be. This is somebody that nobody can explain, but you see that it's not many users are using it, or the features are not going out so nicely, and so on. Or for example, full picture. Nobody has a full picture. If a CEO would ask somebody to explain something, nobody can really say a lot, except for, since they're working in silos, probably they just can explain their area, but how it connects to the other stuff, that's difficult to say. So I'm just also coming back to this point. Nobody is actually agile just because we're saying we're agile or using some tools which are agile. We need to actually put our mindset to it, and also to make a proper decision in which direction our product needs to go. You can actually only do it with the right information, because if you have the wrong information, you will do a wrong decision usually. So, these are all the things the CEOs need to kind of grasp before it's too late. Okay, then let's move on. So I already mentioned something about this before, but let me just come back to it before and after. So if we talk about predictability, sorry, this is now I'm getting too emotional, I guess.
That happens.
So so something being done is definitely different for many teams, and we need to, if you are having predictable releases, you probably have figured out that done needs to mean the same for everyone. UAT happens last minute. If you are having predictable releases, then you probably also figured out that you need to have UAT done before release goes out, which means after implementation, after being deployed to your pre-production system, and then UAT you perform so that it would go out. The things that you need to do, regardless if you're a developer or QA or you're UX or even business owner, it's just something that you think that lives in your head, that is basically there for you, but you don't actively share it with anybody, or you don't actually see the connection with somebody else. That's how teams are not supposed to work, right? So this needs to be visible. This needs to be structured. So you need to have transparency between who does what. And very important here is that usually the tool plays a big role because you need to show it. You need to visualize it. We are visual human beings. I mean, we usually, the best we perform when we visualize things in our heads. And imagine if you visualize this on your screen. So it's a lot easier for you to understand what is happening, unlike you would just have raw data, right? And of course, delivery times are guessed. I've had so many discussions with business teams, especially management, when I would come into a project and then I figure out there are some deadlines given by CEOs or by management. I'm always asking the same question. How did this person actually think about this deadline? How did it come to this deadline? Did you just wake up one morning and just decide, the wind blows this way, let's take that date? Of course, it doesn't go that way. So if you want to have predictable releases, it's not about CEO or anybody from management saying this is going to be done then. Of course, it can happen sometimes in certain, very certain situations where you could have a strong suggestion, please, like, as a wished deadline, because certain things will happen after that if we don't make it. But also in that case, you need to consult your development team. You need to first make sure the development team is on board and understands what needs to be done. Because if something is really bad happening after a certain deadline and you need to make it, then at least your dev team can help you to make an MVP out of it, like the basics thing that would work just to cross this deadline properly. Then later you can do the iteration. So to do all of that, you need proper processes set up. You need the team to be motivated properly. Then you reach this predictability as you would wish. And I come now to the same things that I mentioned very often. A tool is very important. I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to Easy Redmine here. It's something that is very often important for me to visually show, because as I said, if we don't visually see it, usually many people will not understand it or not hold on to it. Yeah, I mean, it's not about just showing the beautiful dashboards, of course, but if you did such a nice progress and process behind, which works nicely, then why not even show it properly visually, right? I'm not sure that, have you guys also experienced this maybe in the past where you would have people complain that, the tool is not doing something properly, but then again, you would figure out it's actually the process behind it that is wrong?
That's a tricky question, right? Like, you know very well what I'm going to respond with.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, there have been many situations where, well, if I put it bluntly, there were some situations where the software was blamed for not providing like proper information, but at the end of the day, it was impossible to provide that kind of information. And I feel like it relates very much to today's age and all the talk about artificial intelligence. Like everyone that implements some form of artificial intelligence will tell you, if you feed it garbage data and if you feed it wrong data, you will never get a good result. And I feel like this is kind of similar. Like if you have a great tool, if you have the best tool in the world, but you don't have the hygiene behind it to approach things properly.
Discipline.
Yeah, the discipline, exactly. You're not going to squeeze the most out of the tool at any point. So that's always two levels. Tool plus some expertise, discipline, hygiene. So yeah, the message from my side is definitely the same.
It's exactly, I mean, it's something that we didn't talk about it before to agree to discuss about this, but I actually saw the biggest value in working with Redmine, just because I think that with the stuff that we do, if this is linked to you guys, in a sense, if we partner up in that sense that we could even show it visually correct, then that would be a great value. If we, do a partnership together. That's how we even come to this point now to have a webinar here. But I'm definitely convinced that the process needs to be clean, the data needs to be in order, so that you can show it visually very nice. Yeah, and we come now to one point which is a thing that we offer in DataDuke. Basically, everything that we spoke about is more or less the problems, right? The challenges that teams are dealing with. So what we do now is that we have a certain service which we provide. It's like a 2-week service, kind of a sprint, right? Where we go into a project. We have certain key areas which we look into, with, as already mentioned, like feature requests done properly, UAT done properly, release management is done properly, branches strategy, and so on. So it's kind of a 6 to 8 areas that we look into, and in 2 weeks we provide a full report on what is the status quo and what is according to our standards or in our belief and our experience that needs to be done to improve, to get to a certain acceptable level and get toward the predictability of releases. So this is actually the thing we provide. So in case anybody would be interested about hearing more about it and listening about it, just hit me a message, an email, or even just go to our website dataduke.net, and then you could probably get some more information there.
Can I have a quick one?
Yeah, sure.
We don't have a lot of questions stacking up, so I'm thinking of like pulling some of the questions right in here instead of like having a block of Q&A at the end, like we said. So I do have one question here that kind of relates to it, and it sort of relates to one of your previous slides, and that was about on the slide there was a mention of CEOs, right? And the C-level executives, it makes total sense for them to do this kind of evaluation or testing or insight. But there will definitely be a lot of project managers or head of portfolio offices, for example. Is this something that can be considered by them as well? Is that something that's worth doing with these kinds of roles, not just CEOs?
Actually, it has more to do with them than to the CEOs. I mean, CEOs are last in line and usually decide on the budget, of course. But the first thing that will, the first people that will feel the change are the people that are working in the operational level, right? So that will definitely be the product leads, the heads of, the directors of product and so on. What you would see, what I can tell you from my experience, what you will feel and see is that your team will start at first. It always begins with it's a change management. Everybody begins to doubt anything because you need to look into all of that, how it works. But once you set up, you find out the whole thing, how it's ticking and how it should be, and then you present it to your team. Usually, it's very, very easily accepted by everyone. And then the first people to feel the benefit of it are the people in product, which are the developers, the whole Scrum team, plus their lead in the second instance.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. That's why our pulse check is only 2 weeks, but our transformation usually goes 6 months in time, because you just need to do all the changes and you need to give it time a little bit so people start living it. And then you get results by noticing that CEO is saying, hey, good job, you did it in time, or customer says, hey, this feature was really nice, it works flawlessly, unlike the last time maybe. So that's kind of the things that we try to reach at the end of our transformation.
I might have a little follow-up question, but to be honest, that's very much like for me. It's probably not for the whole audience, and it's about 3:41 anyway, so I don't think we'll have time. I'll ask it after. So I'll stop interrupting. I'll let you go with the presentation, so we stick within the time frame. So feel free to go ahead.
Okay, great.
Thank you, though.
Well, the next couple of slides which I want to show you is basically the reason of why transformation and tool expertise actually wins. As I already mentioned a little bit before, to just do the process properly is nice. Is always more than a half of things being done. But at the end of the day, you have always these kind of teams which are not working with you directly, so they don't understand your way of working that easily, especially because you're in a different department, which is like business or customer success or whatever, sales, where they don't know the basics of Scrum, of Kanban, of any framework whatsoever. So you need to give them an output, something that is visually easy to grasp. So the combination of these two is definitely something to look into. And what we do and what we can do is that with our partners, in this case also Redmine, we could also provide some sort of a joint value together, where we could help actually the customers and clients to do the transformation, but also for them prepare everything visually to be there within tools, so that at the end of the transformation, at the end of the especially when the pulse check sprint, you would get all the diagnoses which you need to have, plus the whole setup around the tooling, so that you don't have to worry, hey, I'm not the expert of this tool, how am I going to do this? I'm not sure if I have the people in my team, we don't have time for it. So it's kind of a whole package that you could get at the end. And that's basically what says here. And one more thing, that's the how that could look like from the whole diagnosis to the daily practice. There could be, we look into these 6 delivery flows in any case. Usually there are some additional small ones which we need to consider, but the most important happens here. And this, in the second phase, we would create a whole tool setup for you, for the client, so that it would be beneficial, not to spend time on basically doing that. And yeah, I mean, how we could proceed further, because for us, the pulse check sprint is just a service that we provide. It's a standalone thing. And then the client can decide by themselves if they want us to do the transformation for them, if they want them to do it solo. So just, we provided everything, you have the outcomes, just, try to implement. We can even give some more details if it's needed, but you do it yourself. Or the third option is that we help you along the way, but you do it in the sense that you initiate the whole thing. We're there just as a training and consulting partner along the way. That's basically how that looks. And yeah, let's book your first pulse check sprint kickoff. I would very much like to hear feedback on it, and especially questions or doubts or maybe comments that somebody would have, because I'm quite sure we can break that down.
There is a question that I think kind of ties to this. Like with the time that we have left, it makes sense for me to ask it. And that if there's some kind of industry limitation, or if this is something that can be applied and useful like throughout any industry or line of work or type of a company.
You mean like just like a copy?
Because I can imagine that we will have a lot of audience either live or from the recordings. Someone can be from the manufacturing sector, someone might be from the public sphere, someone might be working for a software developer. So if this applies to all of these, or if there are any like specific industries where this is the best.
I mean, definitely, there are some limitations when it comes to certain industries, especially when you talk about healthcare or when you talk about, I don't know, fintech. There are some legal stuff that you need to follow through. So sometimes you need to be a bit differently agile, so to say, but yeah, still agile. With some of the case studies that we have on our website that I can also provide, I can even say that most of the industries can apply most of the stuff that we have done so far. And when I say this, I'm confident we had at least a dozen of companies in almost each industry that is, the big industry. So we could even provide some industry standards or some benchmarks, so clients can actually see how they compare to this industry.
And I would imagine that the pulse check sprint that you've mentioned is also kind of defined to analyze and identify like the amount of good that it can be done if you decide to like scale the service, right?
That's the whole point, actually. We want to be very individualized. So we don't want to make some sort of out of the book, out of the I don't know what kind of a guide. We really want to tailor to your needs, to your industry. And then, of course, we can even all the time provide some benchmark from your industry, so we can I mean, here also not some benchmark which is coming from, I don't know, because we Googled it. It's something just from our own experience. The companies that we have done before, we can show how that works for them.
Okay, then we have about like 1 or 2 minutes left before I should close this webinar to, let's say, keep within the time frame. Is there like a closing sentence, just one sentence, because we have just a minute? Like, is there one closing sentence that you want to leave our audience and future audience with?
I'm just thinking. I have one quote at the end that I wanted to share, and let me just click on it. Predictability isn't a luxury. It's a foundation of trust between business and tech. If you remember what I said until now from the very beginning, I think it all fits this sentence.
This definitely felt rehearsed. That I was like I basically gave you a pass to say this quote, but I did not know about it. But still,
it's good. It's good.
Dušan, thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us today. Once again, this webinar was being recorded, so if any one of you weren't able to catch everything during emails in between, as people do throughout webinars, you can definitely rewatch it later. Like I said, it will be available. It will probably be on our YouTube as well. Dušan, same applies to you, right? Like, I assume that if we have any questions in the future, like if any of you listening to this recording will be showering later today, and that's going to be the big thought that pops into your head, like, we are both sides of the table are definitely ready to participate. So once again, Dušan, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for sharing some of this with us. I know that it's very difficult to condense all of that into such a limited time.
I could talk for hours. I told you already, for like a whole day we can just talk about it if you want.
Maybe this is not the last webinar though, right? Like, maybe we will have some follow-ups. It kind of makes sense.
Would be nice.
All right, everyone, thank you for paying attention to us. And I don't think there's anything else left to say than just say goodbye and have a beautiful rest of Thursday or whatever day you're listening to this. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.